Morning, friends. A human being is weak. In the end, that spring, even the most stubborn of us wanted forgiveness and were ready to give up a lot for just a little bit more life. An anecdote was current among us. What is your last word, accused? I beg you to send me wherever you please, just as long as it is under the Soviet government and the sun is there. No one was threatening to deprive us of the Soviet government, of course, just of the sun. No one wanted to be sent beyond the Arctic Circle to scurvy and malnutrition. For some reason, a legend about the Altai region in particular flourished in the cells. Those rare persons who had been there at one time or another, but especially those who had never been there, wove melodious dreams about the wonderful country of the Altai for their cellmates. It had been the vast expanses of Siberia and a mild climate. Rivers of honey flowing between banks of wheat, the steppe and mountains, herds of sheep, flocks of wild fowl, shoals of fish, populous, rich villages. Oh, if only we could find a hiding place in that quiet! If only we could listen to the pure resounding of the cock-crow in the unpolluted air, or stroke the good, serious face of a horse. Curses on you, all you great problems! Let someone else beat his head against you, someone more stupid. Oh, just to rest there from the interrogator's mother oaths and the monotonous unwinding of your whole life, from the crash of the prison locks, from the suffocating stuffiness of the cell. Only one life is allotted us, one small, short life. And we had been criminal enough to push ours in front of somebody's machine guns, or drag it with us, still unsullied, into the dirty rubbish heap of politics. There in the Altai, it appeared, one could live in the lowest, darkest hut on the edge of the village next to the forest. And one could go into the woods, not for brushwood and not for mushrooms, but just to go, for no reason, and hug 2 tree trunks. Dear ones, you're all I need. And the spring itself sounded a summons to mercy. It was the spring that marked the ending of such an enormous war. We saw that millions of us prisoners were flowing past, and knew that millions more would greet us in the camps. It just couldn't be that so many people were to remain in prison after the greatest victory in the world. It was just to frighten us that they were holding us for the time being, so that we might remember and take heed. Of course, there would soon be a total amnesty, and all of us would be released. Someone even swore that he had read in a newspaper that Stalin, replying to some American correspondent, whose name I cannot remember, said that after the war there would be an amnesty the like of which the world had never seen, and one of the interrogators had actually said to someone else that there would soon be a general amnesty. These rumors were a help to the interrogators because they weakened the prisoner's will. The hell with him, let's sign. It isn't going to be for long anyway. But for mercy one must have wisdom. This has been a truth throughout our history, and will remain one for a long time to come. We did not heed the few sober minds among us who croaked out that never in a whole quarter century had there been an amnesty for political prisoners, and that there never would be one. Some cell expert among the stool pigeons leaped up with an answer. Yes, there was, in 1927, for the 10th anniversary of the Revolution. All the prisons were emptied, and white flags were flown on all of them. This astonishing vision of white flags on the prisons, why white, was particularly striking. We brushed aside those wise individuals among us who explained that millions of us were in prison precisely because the war had ended. We were no longer needed at the front, we were dangerous in the rear. And were it not for us, not one brick would ever get laid at the remote construction projects. We were too self-absorbed even to grasp Stalin's simple economic calculations, let alone his malice. Just who this year, after being demobilized, would want to leave his family and home and go off to the Crimea or Vorkuta or Siberia, where there were neither roads nor horses? It was virtually the job of the State Planning Commission to assign to the MVD the number of workers required for plan fulfillment and thus the number to be arrested. An amnesty, a broad and generous amnesty, was what we waited for and thirsted for. Somebody said that in England prisoners were amnestied on the anniversary of the coronation, in other words, every year. Many politicals had been amnestied on the 300th anniversary of the Romanovs in 1912. Could it really be possible that now, after we had won a victory which would resound throughout an entire era, and even longer, the Stalin government would be petty and vengeful, and would hang on to its resentments of every stumble and slip of each of its minuscule subjects? There is a simple truth which one can learn only through suffering. In war, not victories are blessed, but defeats. Governments need victories, and the people need defeats. Victory gives rise to the desire for more victories, but after a defeat it is freedom that men desire and usually attain. A people needs defeat just as an individual needs suffering and misfortune. They compel the deepening of the inner life and generate a spiritual upsurge. The Poltava victory was a great misfortune for Russia. It resulted in 2 centuries of great strain and stress, ruin, the absence of freedom, and war again. The Poltava victory spelled salvation for the Swedes. Having lost the appetite for war, the Swedes became the most prosperous and the freest people in Europe. We are so used to taking pride in our victory over Napoleon that we leave out of account the fact that because of it, the emancipation of the serfs did not take place a half a century sooner. Because of it, the strengthened monarchy destroyed the Decembrists. The French occupation was never a reality for Russia, but the Crimean War and the Japanese War, and our war with Germany in the First World War, all those defeats brought us freedom and revolution. We believed in amnesty that spring. We weren't being at all original in this. Talking with old prisoners, one gradually discovers that this thirst for mercy and this faith in mercy is never absent within great prison walls. For decades and decades, wave after wave of prisoners has thirsted for and believed in either an amnesty or a new code or in general a general review of cases. And the rumors about these things have always been supported by the organs with skilled caution. The prisoner's imagination sees the ardently awaited arrival of the angel of liberation in just about anything. The next anniversary of the October Revolution, Lenin's anniversaries, Victory Day, Red Army Day, Paris Commune Day, every new session of the All-Russian Central Executive Committee, the VTIK, the end of every 5-year plan, every plenary session of the Supreme Court. And the wilder the arrests, the more Homeric and mind-boggling the scale of the waves of prisoners, the more they inspired not sober-mindedness, but faith in amnesty. All sources of life can, to some degree, be compared with the sun, and the sun cannot be compared with anything. So it is that all the expectations in the world can be compared with the expectation of amnesty, but the expectation of amnesty cannot be compared with anything else. In the spring of 1945, every newcomer to the cell was asked first of all that he had heard about an amnesty, what he had heard about an amnesty, and if 2 or 3 prisoners were taken from their cells with their things, the cell experts immediately compared cases and drew the conclusion that theirs was the least serious cases and that they had been clearly taken out to be released. It had begun. In the toilet and in the baths, the prisoners' post offices, our activists looked everywhere for signs and graffiti about the amnesty. And one day at the beginning of July, in the famous lavender vestibule of the Butriki baths, we read the enormous prophecy written in soap on a glazed lavender slab, far higher than a man's head, which meant that one man had stood on another's shoulders in order to write it in a place where it would take longer to erase. Hurrah! Amnesty on July 17th. What a celebration went on. After all, if they hadn't known for sure, they wouldn't have written it. Everything that beat, pulsed, circulated in the body came to a stop beneath the wave of happiness, the expectation that the doors were about to swing open. But for mercy, one must have wisdom. In the middle of July, the corridor jailer sent an old man from our cell to wash down the toilet. And while they were there, eye to eye, for he wouldn't have dared in the presence of witnesses, he looked sympathetically at the prisoner's gray head and asked, "What's your article, father?" 58? The old man lit up. At home, 3 generations were mourning his arrest. "You're not included," sighed the jailer. "Nonsense," we decided in the cell. "Just an illiterate jailer." There was also a young man from Kiev in the cell, Valentin. I can't remember his family name. He had big eyes that were beautiful in a feminine way, and he was terrified by the interrogation. There is no doubt that he had the gift of precognition, perhaps only in his then current state of excitement. More than once he went around the cell in the morning and pointed, "Today they are going to come for you and you. I saw it in my dream, and they came and got them." The very individuals he had pointed out. One might add that a prisoner's heart is so inclined toward mysticism that he accepts precognition almost without surprise. On July 27, Valentin came up to me. "Alexander, today it is our turn." And he told me a dream that had all the characteristics of prison dreams. a bridge across a muddy stream, across. I began to get my things together. It was not for nothing either. He and I were summoned after morning tea. Our cellmates saw us off with noisy good wishes, and many of them assured us we were going off to freedom. They had figured it out by comparing our less serious cases. Perhaps you honestly don't believe it. Perhaps you won't allow yourself to believe. You can try to brush it aside with jokes, but if flaming pincers, hotter than anything else on earth, suddenly close around your heart, they just do. Suppose it's true? They assembled 20 of us from various cells. They assembled 20 of us from various cells and took us to the baths first. Before every big chance in his life, the prisoner had first of all to take a bath. We had time enough there, an hour and a half, to exchange our hunches and ideas. At that point, all steamed up, our skins tender, we were taken through the little emerald park in the Butriki's interior courtyard, where the birds sang deafeningly, although they were probably only sparrows, and the green of the trees seemed unbearably bright to the eyes no longer used to it. Never had my eyes seen the green of the leaves with such intensity as they did that spring. Never in my life had I seen anything closer to God's paradise than that little Butriki park, which never took more than 30 seconds to cross on the asphalt path. They took us to the Butriki station, a very well-chosen nickname for that reception and dispatch point, especially because its main hall was really like a good railroad station. They pushed us into a large, spacious box. It was half dark inside, and the air was clean and fresh, since its one and only little window was very high up and had no muzzle. And it opened on that same sunny little park, and through the transom the birds twittered. The birds twittered deafened us, and in the opening a little bright green twig hung, promising us all freedom and home. We had never been imprisoned in such a good box, and that couldn't be a matter of chance. We were all cases of the OSOs, the special boards attached to the GPU and KVD, and it turned out that each of us had been imprisoned for nothing much. No one touched us for 3 hours. No one opened the doors. We paced up and down the box, and finally, tired out, we sat down on the slab benches, and the little twig kept bobbing and bobbing outside the opening, and the sparrows screamed as if they were possessed. Suddenly the door crashed open, and one of us was summoned, a quiet bookkeeper, 35 years old. He went out. The door was locked. We started running about our box even more agitatedly than before. We were on hot coals. Once more the crash of the door. They called another out and readmitted the first. We rushed to him, but he was not the same man. The life had gone out of his face. His wide open eyes were unseeing. His movements were uncertain as he stumbled across the smooth floor of the box. Was he in a state of shock? Had they swatted him with an ironing board? Well, we asked him with sinking hearts. If he had not in fact just gotten up from the electric chair, he must at very least have been given a death sentence. And in the voice of one reporting the end of the universe, the bookkeeper managed to blurt out, 5 years. And once more the door crashed. That was how quickly they returned, and as if they were only being taken to the toilet to urinate. The second man returned, all aglow. Evidently he was being released. Well, come on. We swarmed around him, our hopes rising again. He waved his hand, choking with laughter. 15 years! It was just too absurd to be believed. Have a good day, friends.